Welcome to Mental Health Monthly with DeGryse and Chris Muscle.
All right, here we are back again. Mental Health Monthly for the month of August. Welcome to the show. My name is DeGryse, and this is Chris Muscle. Chris,
what's up, Dan?
All's good. All's good. So we're going to talk about something interesting today, and it's going to dovetail a little bit into a couple of different areas. Obviously, we talk about mental health, right? But we I think people talk about in Firefighter Nation fires and incidences and legal stuff and leadership and more fire stuff, and I don't typically talk about that piece, fires and so forth. Anybody that knows me knows that I kind of would actually preferably talk about things I could have done way better. And then what's the aftermath of that? What's the totality of maybe a near miss or an oh crap moment, or oh, I should have done this. And so from a positivity standpoint, anybody that knows when we talk about behavioral health, I want to, and I know Chris does, talk from more of a strength-based standpoint than a negative standpoint, you know, the whole stigma associated with mental health. And I believe for anybody to talk about their anything other than the strengths and from their mental health standpoint takes a lot of strength to be vulnerable and talk about. So that's what we're going to do. And it has started off, I think Chris is going to ask me a question.
Yeah. So near misses and aftermath, right? So obviously everyone knows you. Maybe there's some that don't. But long career, 30 plus years, Chicago Fire Department, right? From recruit all the way to battalion chief. So, one thing that we do in the fire service, you do it in the military, the police, police officers do it, is you have these calls and we do after actions, right? What went well, maybe what didn't go so well, what could we do differently next time? And I think it's important to talk about, obviously, for all the reasons, right? Life safety, strategies, tactics, all that. However, when we do that, that helps our mental health, right? It helps build upon that. It helps build that foundation, that layer. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some near misses and what that looked like.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think we all look at our own incidences, and as you talk and asking a question, you think about the events that I and others would like to have a do-over. And some people do that after action. I think it comes from the military, right? After action report to see what they could do better to get it right. And for some ops, right, you what's you're saying is you don't do it to get it right. You make sure you don't do anything wrong, or to some respect in that. And we know that in our career line, we have to train, and there's unfortunately a lot of line of duty deaths, but a lot of times we don't want to do those after action reports because historically, most ones that I've been in and have been a part of, they start out with what you did wrong. And that then creates a negative stigma around that. So then it's like, oh, Christ, so we're going to go listen to DeGryse tell us about what we did wrong, and kind of pushes you down or beats you down as opposed to build you up. So they then, those near misses, those incidences, those things we could have done better, swirl around individually in our own heads going, and what happens? What's the totality of that long term? I can tell you vividly, and I don't remember vividly, but a few incidences in my career And usually those are ones that I'm like, man, I wish I could have done better. One particular one goes way back when I was lieutenant on the east side of Chicago, and we were going up a 4+1. If anybody knows, you got scissor stairwells. And I'm just going to say that when we let out, I was the officer, the lead out was dropped, and then it became a mess. I must have got called by the chief several times, like, hey, or no, the engineer, and then the chief going, do you need the water? Do you need water? And I kept on saying no. And in hindsight, I should have gone back to the shutoff pipe, had that shut off, said send it, and then we would work from there. But I was in the stairwell, not where the pipe was, and I'm like, no, do not send the water. Well, everybody heard that on Fireground. They're like, why don't they have water on that fire yet? Right? So that reverberates, and I'm not going to tell you to go into the whole story, but it was unfun. I did not make the right decision. Nobody got hurt, but to this day, and that's almost 30 years ago, that I live with that of, man, I could have done better, and why didn't I? So near miss, a lot of times people look at somebody was going to get hurt or killed. Well, somebody could have. I mean, and it was because we didn't get to the seat of fire quick enough. But really, from this incident, it's like I'm saying to myself, I should have done better. And to this day, I'm not even sure exactly. I can't put my finger on that. So from a mental health standpoint, there's times I can remember stuff when I was 6, but usually, as we know from a behavioral health standpoint, those are imprinted on us based on our central nervous system and the impact it has on us. And hopefully I don't lose anybody, but that particular near miss was my father considering suicide. And I was at the base of the stairs. And there was nothing that I knew I could do at the time because I didn't have any understanding of exactly what's going on. 2 guys came in to go up there to get his handgun away. But that is imprinted in my head. And I'm like, I think back even to, that's 54 years ago. Could I have done something different? That was a near miss personally, right? That's imprinted in my head. I'm not going to go on with the other 5 or 10 incidences in my life that from the job, and maybe something will come up, but those have a totality in not my day-to-day living, but when we have these discussions. And I think anybody that knows that they have this, sometimes you cannot prevent that from coming up. You don't know when that's going to come up. I kind of knew that was going to come up because we knew we were going to have this discussion today. And even knowing it is a bit unfun. I'm not trying to make it light of it, but it's unfun to be like, yeah, okay. My dad did not die, and nobody died at the fire, but those are near misses, both personally and professionally, that have a weight. And from us, and I know from you personally, from your military background and even from the job of losses, and I'm not trying to turn the tables, but just from a familiarity standpoint, you've had, and I wouldn't even say that they're near misses, but they're losses that a lot of times we just take the mathematical equation of the loss, which is significant, and we forget about the near misses and the totality of that throughout our careers. Right? Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I think starting with the near misses before the losses. You mentioned that fire and that nobody was injured and or killed, which obviously is a good thing. You know, I think that anyone that is passionate about this job, like if I had to guess, knowing you, you're probably harder on yourself than anyone. When you were a lieutenant, when you were a chief, when that's just who you are. And so
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are. So I don't think I'm
there
any
are.
different than anybody else. But go
No,
ahead.
but people, you wear that harder, right? As to opposed to maybe somebody that's not hard on themselves and they're it happened, right? And so, but how do we take near misses? Because you said something that was key, like when we're going to do that after action, right? And you're like, oh man, we're going to get in trouble, we're going to get jammed up, all this stuff's going to happen, right? How do you make it a positive? We talk about the military a lot. There's near misses in the military that happen on missions, that happen on ops, right? And you come back and you debrief it and you figure out what went wrong and you figure out what we need to do better, and we move on from it. And then you have the losses, right? I know that you've experienced loss in your career. I've experienced loss in my career. And that's something that you deal with, right? Some people handle it well. Some people don't handle it so well. Some people, it takes some time to navigate it. But I think that something that's important to talk about on this show episode is being in the business that we're in. You know that every day you go to work, there's a potential of a near miss or loss. You walk in that firehouse, you put that gear on that rig. It's a very dynamic environment. It's very unpredictable, right? And so there's that potential every single shift, whether you work in Chicago, McKinney, rural area, right? So how do you prepare yourself?
And you just mentioned that, like rural area. One of the things that, man, troubles me, and we had Scott's Law as a result of it in Illinois, is when a firefighter is killed en route in a vehicle to an incident. I don't have an answer to it other than going super, super slow. But you see in the secrets list from Billy Goldfeder, a lot of losses in given days. Well, the topic of this is near misses. But again, there's from a loss to a near miss to even a success, there's the after effects of that and the intensity as well as the longevity of that. And what from a persona standpoint and a mental health aspect of it, I don't think a lot of us take inventory of that. Now, I offered this conversation to you. I don't mind talking about myself, but this probably is one of the more difficult ones to have a discussion on and offer because, like you said, many people, you included, are very critical of ourselves. And when we look at job performance, most of us want to be, quote unquote, the best. I know I am not that, but still with this particular near miss, it is laid with me for the better part of 30 years and will never go away. And so what I think both of us want to offer is that in order for us to be solid with our wellness, mental health wellness, is we have to be willing to take that inventory. Because I'll be honest, is that there's times I think about it, I give it attention, and then I move on. It doesn't stay with me all day, every day. When it's brought up, much like critical events, we think about it. We have a thought, we have a feeling, we have an emotion. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, thought process. Therapy is having a discussion with it with somebody else and trying to move past it. I've had the ability so far up until now to move through it, not past it, because that would mean that I wouldn't have any thoughts or feelings or emotion behind it, which I do, and or I wouldn't be remembering it. I move past it, and past. That's my definition of it. People could have other ones like, well, you can still remember it and still be past it. Well, in my opinion, no, because with that memory, you have that thought, you have that value to it, which I didn't do well at the incident. I could have done better, and it could have been way worse. So I'm not catastrophizing it. There's so many there's so many things associated with it. And I really, believe it or not, I've only talked to one or two other people about this in 30 years. And that's how secretive we have a tendency to be, me included. I'm no different. I'm the guy, hey, straight talk. I'm about, let's talk about this, be vulnerable. But I'm telling you right now that this is probably the only, and I don't know who's listening. You are, of course, but you're the third person that knows this in this particular incident. I don't even know if I can actually go through the whole process to explain it to you. So with that said, you mentioned like deal with it. And my thing is not like me deal with it, but how do we deal with it? Right? Do we do the after action review? Do we do the self-reflection? Do we train? Do we move on? And my thought was, when you say that, is it like how and how long? I've said I've been dealing with it for 30 years. It doesn't take me down and out. It takes me to a space where I am unhappy with my performance. And I know that there were several people at that incident that had a less than favorable view of my performance. So when people will say, and I had a hard time putting this stuff up. It sat in a closet, but I decided to put it up because it represents the better part of my life. But there's also other things that come along with that we're afraid to take out of the closet, which, thanks, Chris, you brought out of the closet today with me.
Yeah.
But I initiated it, so it's not your fault.
Welcome to Mental Health Monthly. So I think so. You bring up two good points, and I'm going to talk about a situation in a few minutes. But you bring up two good points. You said that there was people on that incident that were less than favorable of you, and I could only imagine, right, being a fireman, what that felt like or looked like. But then you also said another key word, which was vulnerability. And so knowing how we view, judge our own, right? It's not easy to be vulnerable in this business, right? And so I think that that's a tough thing to be vulnerable. And I think that I'm not trying to downplay or discredit, our ability to perform and be good, and somebody's counting on you. And I understand all that, but this is a tough job. And I think sometimes we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace. And I was the worst at that. Right. And I'm not saying I'm not talking about this situation specifically. I'm just saying in general, I think it's hard when you know that people, you hear it all the time. Oh, this rig, oh, that crew, oh, that shift, oh, that station, right? And then you're like, how am I supposed to be vulnerable, which is what you really need to be after the fact, right? With the after action, the self-reflection, personally, professionally, that's tough, right? And I'll stop there because.
Yeah, no, again, from a mental wellness standpoint, do we process through that? And anybody that knows me going back 20 something years to, speaking at FDIC and on the big stage because of Bobby Halton, talking about mental wellness and being a little bit vulnerable about my relationship with my spouse, where she loved me, but she didn't always like me. That's a vulnerability, but there's also, that was tough. And I remember her asking me, are you really going to do that? And I said, I think I have to. I think I have to show that we are not perfect and that we went through tough times and we can come out the other side and be okay. The same way in regards to our work performance, not just our own relationships. But I have done that more often with my relationships and my work performance. So I'm more comfortable talking about my less than favorable personality at times than the near misses or the woulda, coulda, shoulda type things from a job. Although, and some people that know me close, I'll talk about some incidences that aren't as probably difficult as the one I'm talking about, where I'm like, oh yeah, I had an incident where we had a jumper on the 45th floor, or we had I was chief downtown, had a report of a fire on the 36th floor. The water gong was going off. The people in the apartment were in the lobby. They said, yeah, we got the fire up there. And in both situations, which I'm not supposed to do, I find myself on the fire floor and the floor that the individuals jumping out. Some people are like, oh, no, that's good. No, that's not my job. My job was to be incident command, lobby control. I knew what I needed to do, but something pulled me in a different direction. I woke up after I didn't fall asleep. I realized I was in the wrong spot after I closed the door of the apartment fire, because they opened it up. And just before I knocked on or entered the door where the person was that was supposedly attempting suicide or going to jump out the window, I let the fireman go in. I went back to my post, which I was supposed to do. Some people would say that's human, but anyhow, neither one were a near miss, but they weren't exactly what I was trained to do or supposed to do at the time, if you follow me on that aspect.
Yeah, no.
And so, and here's the thing, you or anybody else listen, that's fine. Have a variety of different thoughts and responses about that. What matters is what I think. Same thing the same thing with anybody else and their losses, near misses, and so forth. What drives me bananas is like when somebody has a loss, and I know from your military background, you've had some, and you've had to process those. And in our relationship, I would like to think that with you and anybody else, I've never said, well, you should, right? That doesn't work. It's like, tell me more. Can I help you? And can I offer you a thought? That I find beneficial to help people work through, from the title of this, near misses and losses. But we also then, in a whole nother aspect, don't always talk about the successes, which if we're in a teeter-totter and we talk about losses and near misses and don't talk about the successes, right? What does our teeter-totter look like? And what I'm saying is, what does our mental health look like?
Yeah. And exactly. If it's just the constant near misses, what could I do better, negativity, then yeah, that's not going to be good. I think that it's a really good point that you say, and everybody's going to process differently. obviously I have dealt with loss in the military. I'll take it one step further. As you know, responded to one of our own. Captain was off duty from my firehouse, a vehicle accident, tragic accident in my district. And I know you remember this, but long day at the hospital, doing all the things, finally go home. And one of my first calls was you. Right. And I bring that up because you did that. You listened, you asked questions, you listen, you ask questions. Never once did you say it's going to be okay. You did the best you can. I'm sure you did great. And it's important because we're fixers in this business. That's what we do. We show up on people's worst day. At least worst day in their mind. Might not be the worst day for us because that's our 15th run and we've seen 3 calls way worse than that already. But it's hard. And that's one thing that I've had to learn is when people reach out or when people have experienced near misses or loss, the hardest thing to do is just sit there and listen and be a support and not try to fix it like you're saying, right?
Couldn't agree more.
And that will, for me, in my own personal experience, because I'm a fixer, like many of the people listening on this show, that will forever be a conscious thought at the forefront of my brain that when I walk into these situations or I answer that phone or I'm there in person, I have to consciously say, okay, you don't have to fix it. You just need to be here for them. And sometimes that's the best medicine. I also think going back to the fact that everyone processes differently. I like how you said that. What did you say? That the thought, the experience, what did you say? What was that?
Thought, feeling, and emotion.
Thought, feeling, and emotion. Right. So for me, I think that our captain, for example, that we lost, right? I have thoughts, feelings, and emotions about it all the time. But through my own growth, healing, whatever you want to call it, I get to control that. Right. And so, can that be a positive experience? Sure. Can there be hard days? Sure. So I guess where I'm going with that is we have these near misses, we have these losses. And so what does that look like going forward? You know, the department's going to do departmental things. They're going to do the after action. They're going to bring in the peer support teams. They're going to do all that. But as much work as they're putting into it, I feel like we have to put in ourselves.
Yeah, you have to have a game plan. You have to have a construct to do it other than put it in the back. And again, I'll be honest with the first scenario that I shared in regards to that that fire is I truly have not processed that the way I should have because I was truly fearful, uncomfortable, fearful of judgment, the judgment I gave myself. And I don't even know if I'd have to, my wife pretty much knows just about everything. And I don't know if I've processed that with her. Again, I'm no bit different than anybody else. I know other people have that. And when we struggle with the overt losses, the suicides, the line of duty deaths, the accidents that we see from the secret list and from the department or nearby, it has an effect on us. But what we don't talk about a ton, again, are those near misses and effects on our psyche in a sense of whether it be morally right or good or bad, in a sense of should I have pushed, should we have pushed more with the fire? Should we have backed out of it? Should I have held people from going in? anyhow, there's so many different things. There's not one particular thing from the near miss. I mean, I could, from a positivity standpoint, I can tell you, I remember being a officer on my old company, Truck 35, which is actually right there. Whoops. I had a gentleman that built that darn thing. That's pretty cool. Anyhow,
So cool.
I was in the officer side. We had a guy in the middle and then a driver, and he was not he was like the sixth string driver that day. Of course, we had an incident, and we're en route we're heading down North Avenue, and we're coming up to, I'm going to say, anyhow, Pulaski or somewhere. And I could see out of the corner of my eye. So the light turns yellow then red. And my guy's going through it. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not a yeller. I don't have a pedal or anything on my side. And I see this SUV coming, and it's going, and it's not stopping. Doesn't care about our horns or lights or big red truck. And all I said was, "Do you see him?" And then he hit the brakes. And here's the thing. You know the old Seagraves, I mean, you're right there at the glass.
Yeah.
And they got a little bumper in the front, thank goodness. And they got crappy brakes. Well, this SUV, I could see I could look down and see the guy's feet, and we didn't hit him. We missed him. But I figured we're going to T-bone this guy, and he's going to go spinning around, near miss. Well, that's a scary situation. My heart rate actually didn't raise. I'm like, oh, I kind of like, we're going to hit him. Didn't hit him. Long story short, we're coming back, and I said, well, let's get a lottery ticket. I look at the address. It's 1938, whatever it was, Tallman or whatever street it was on. We get a pick 4, box it, 1938. I think it was 1908. We actually get a fire. We're there. We're coming back, and we're like, oh crap, we missed the midday lottery. Wouldn't you know? I mean, I don't know what the odds are to pick that number. It wasn't 1908, but it was like, I called my wife. I said, hey, what was the lottery number? And she said it was like 1089. So it was the same numbers. We boxed it. We won like $5,000.
That's awesome.
What are the freaking chances? Number one, that we missed a guy, right? That was a near miss, but
yeah,
a good near miss. And we won. We split up $5,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, how cool is that?
But and we caught a fire.
And you caught a fire. So you said a key point that it popped into my brain when you were telling the story, is a good near miss. And so we are so critical of ourselves sometimes. Like, listen, I'm not saying you downplay it. Like, oh, we missed the guy. Don't think about it. Sure. We talk about it. Hey, did we clear the intersection? Did we go over speed? Whatever the situation was, or was it just something that was unavoidable, uncontrollable by our standards, right? But I think that's something that is key. Like, that was a good near miss. Is that something that we can have a quick little hot wash, talk about it, go get the lottery ticket, make the run, right? And we move on for it. Because there has been things in my career that I have probably held on to a little too long, right? And and it never ends well. I shouldn't say it never ends well, but it doesn't fare well. So, and that kind of stuff happens every day, right?
Every day.
Maybe they don't win the $5,000.
No, I wish they would, but no. I mean, I don't even know what the odds are with that. But I noticed too, and I'm sure people saw, and I know because I do the same thing, is when you're reflecting on their misses, you paused, you're like, you probably have a visceral response that most people didn't necessarily see. And then you're like, do I say it, or can I say it? Or can I even get it out of my mouth? And everybody goes through that in a given day, but do we, well, the purpose of this show, what we are trying to do is model that it's okay to get to talk about it. I've talked about two, one, poor performance. And then they could even say about the driving, you should have known, you should have told the guy to stop, whatever. You should have pressed the imaginary brake on the officer's side. You should have steered, grab the imaginary steering column. Anyhow, there's always judgment, right? Regardless of anything. But yeah, just like with the numbers and the statistics that are out there, in a sense of line of duty deaths, do we talk about the lives saved? And we don't. And near misses don't have to have a negative stigma. I think generally they do, but a lot of them could have more positive value or thought around it than negative.
And that's I was listening to another podcast the other day, and it wasn't fire service related, but it was a leadership style podcast, I guess. Pretty notable person. And we were talking, I say we, wasn't my podcast. I was listening. They were talking about, talking about this. Call it in the hotline. But to your point is, we don't talk about the positive outcomes enough. And it's almost like people are afraid to say, hey, let me tell you about this really cool call or good job we did or whatever, because people take it as what? Well, that guy's bragging and his ego and blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, and it was kind of like a shot across the bow listening to it, because it's like, when's the last time you were able to call your buddy and be like, man, we just made this run and we did freaking awesome.
Well, all I'm going to say, and made me think, right? So 6 years as battalion chief, we have 24 battalions, travel in the city for a year and a half, and then being in my own battalion for 4.5 years or 5, going to district every day, district meetings, weekly or monthly, memos that come out. I don't think there's ever been a single one that ever said, hey, make sure you go to all your officers and your companies and tell them something they did really well.
Powerful. And let me back up for a second. We are good at highlighting the really big things. The grab that was made, the technical rescue, the baby that was saved, right? The big ones. But to your point, what you just said, the simple, how far would it go? And we've talked about this a little bit with Chief DeYear. We've had him on before. As a battalion chief, you walk in that firehouse to that crew and you're like, hey, looked at y'all's runs from last shift. You guys are doing pretty good. Great job. I appreciate you making my job easy. Most people are trying to appease who? The next person up. It's just like kids. Kids are trying to make win the respect, please their parents, however you want to say it. Parents to the grandparent. It's no different in the job. And I've said it before, right? Maybe if we put it in this context, maybe a crew had a near miss the shift before that maybe didn't go all the way up, because I imagine that intersection with the car and truck 35 probably didn't make it up to the battalion and the district, right? They probably stayed within the company, right? And so you're struggling with that as a company officer or your chauffeur, whatever you call him, right? Your battalion doesn't know about it, but next shift he just happens to pop in or later that day and say, hey, you know what? You guys are doing pretty good. Appreciate it. I know I can always count on truck 35. Man, maybe that was the win they needed. Doesn't have to always be like going to the counselor and peer support. And those things are important. I'm not discrediting those. but it doesn't always have to be this big, elaborate response to dealing with a situation, right? I don't know if that sounds crazy or not, but
Well, it's the little things. And I think back to that, if you shared that with somebody and they're like, well, there could have been a lot of questions like, why was he going so fast? Oh, he was a sixth driver. He wasn't experienced. 92 different things. And it may be true, but hey, it didn't happen. It's how are we delivering information to people, and what's the purpose? It directly has an impact on our individuals, truly from a leadership standpoint. And as you mentioned, Chief Dier had talked about the better part of, I think, this last 5 or 10 years, where he had talked about the fact that he took a greater interest in the individuals, which is something I learned to do and enjoy doing. But nobody necessarily told me that.
yeah.
Not to say I'm anybody special, but I wish somebody would have had that conversation. Say, hey, if you're that captain, if you're that battalion chief, if you're that deputy, come out of that friggin' office, and as much as we love to tear people down and criticize, give them a good whack. Meaning, give them a good positive.
So I would tell you, in my opinion, for me, I would much rather have the battalion that stops by, that gives you a good whack and sits there and enjoys a cup of coffee, than an award on a piece of paper that's going to sit on a shelf.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
100%. And I think that, some of us can be a little better with grace.
I had an officer that I told, in downtown we have 1,100 high rises. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of elevators, and every single day we have 20 entrapments. Some of the big high rises have their own elevator, Schindler or Otis or some other organization, 24 hours a day. But there are some buildings that have 50 or more elevators. And then there's blind chat. Anyhow, so I was no elevator expert, but as a captain downtown and a chief, you got to be knowledgeable about elevators and blind shafts and drifting elevators and elevator recall, all that stuff. I had one officer, I said, I know you all want to do your stuff and you don't want me to show up. But I said, the best thing about me is my ass walking out the door. But, and not that I have a great looking rear, but, let them do their thing. And this equates to the near misses, is that let me know when you have a significant thing, and then let me decide too if I should be there or not. You don't always have to call for me, but you have my cell phone. Well, I knew the individual had a issue with an elevator. He was there for a while. So I just showed up, and he looked at me like, oh crap. And I didn't bear into him. I said, his name was Derek. I said, what's going on? He got nervous. I'm like, listen, don't get nervous. Just tell me what's going on, because what did we talk about? He said, well, when I have an incident like with a blind shaft, I should call you. I said, yeah, not necessarily on a radio, but on a phone, just give me some incidents. Because what I don't want is a near miss or a near accident, or maybe I don't know, but include us. So I understand, and you talked about aggressiveness, I think, or we were talking about aggressiveness or aggressive personnel, or could be, maybe we didn't, maybe I just made that up. But people want to be able to do stuff, but we also have to have checks and balances, and that could be a near miss. So anyhow, long story short is he comes back and apologize, and I kind of gave him a little ringing, little
Yeah.
And then I turn around and I said, "Oh, by the way, nice job." I didn't do it in front of his crew. I just said, "Next time, don't do that again." But good job. I know you can handle stuff, but include me. So,
Well, yeah, right. There's so many elements to it. And it happens all the time.
today, tomorrow, the next day, and all that. So
Right.
we're communicating, discussing this, and I know your thought process is going on. You're thinking of things that you've done. We can't always air everything on the radio either.
Right.
But
I think we talked about it, grace, vulnerability. There's a difference in having grace and just letting people be rogue and not holding a standard, and not towing the company line, whatever you want to say. You have to do that, right? But there are good crews out there that operate every day in this country who have near misses. And
so with that said, can you quantify how many you think you've had in each of your two careers?
in the military?
And the fire service?
Oof.
I know that's a tough
that's
question.
a tough one.
Yeah.
The military, right? That's tough because when you're in combat, the guy that hit an IED that got blown up that lived, that's a near miss. The guy that the round hit right above it, those are all near misses. And
yeah,
so I feel like in Ramadi, you could say every day was probably a near miss at some point. Anywhere from 10 to 20 firefights a day, and some were 10 minutes and some were hours on end. So I think, but I think we had a different mindset around it in the military, and the way that we approached it in our after actions and the way that we adjusted. We say just fire, and I'm not talking literally just fire, but we adjusted accordingly. And then in the fire service, I mean, if you take in all of the little almost hit this car, blew through an intersection, house fire that you were backed out of at the last second, they called it defensive and you got out right before. I don't even know that
So we'll say in either one, there's more than one. And so
yeah,
Illinois, Texas, California, Ohio, whatever it is, everybody is dealing with or has experienced a near miss, but do we give it the attention and processing that is necessary so that we can have a more favorable life moving forward? One of the things I think, people use the word regrets, but you think about all these unfortunate individuals that have chosen anesthetizing or substances or even suicide because of potentially unaddressed or processed traumas. Most people look at it just as a loss of life, but there's also I put it in the categories of near misses. And should we be able to do a better job at after action critique, self, group, company, whatever level, so that we can work through that? I think we're both saying, yeah. How do we do that? Yeah. And that starts with leadership and leaders to put that on the agenda every single day. Let's talk about this. Or does anybody have one that they don't want to, hey, off the record, what don't I know? Right? I had a personnel issue where I remember I was a new captain and I was sitting at a spot and the chief came in. We had an incident where we were short a man. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. Long story short is that we're trying to work it out. Everybody does that stuff, whether it be a tool, something,
Sure.
personnel. And I'm like, do I tell him? Do I not tell him? Are we working it out? Are we fixing it? Whatever it may be. How many people have pounded out a bumper on a rig, right? There's a lot of chiefs a lot of fire chiefs that are out there, a lot of retired guys that have done that. So with this personnel issue, I look at the chief and I go, hey, chief, he's like, what? I go, I think I got something to tell you. And I go, and he goes, do I need to know this? And I go, I'm not 100% sure. He goes, well, let me know when you are. So I was like, I don't know if that was good or bad. Do I need, kind of, anyhow, it actually obviously worked out. I didn't get terminated, neither did the guy, but another, I wouldn't say like a near miss, like a catastrophe, but these are daily decisions that people are making, and that I remember, right? You remember stuff. The people are listening remember, and again, from a totality standpoint, it's like, okay, was that the right thing to do? If we gave that, and if I gave you more information, I'd guarantee you that not everybody would have made the same decision.
Right. And I think that there is a healthy balance into doing stuff like that, because that's where growth comes from, right?
Self-efficacy, post-traumatic growth, yeah, all that stuff.
Right. But there has to be a balance. Because
yes, but the what we're talking about is there has to be, balance in a process. And do we allow for that?
Right. And that's something that the individual has to ask themselves. For my post-traumatic growth, advocating for myself, the majority of my career, that wasn't a thing. Right? 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and even on the near misses, right? You did whatever you did, and then you left, and it was gone, and then the next shift, and it works until it doesn't. I'll say that.
Oh, no truer statement, right? It works until it doesn't, and then what?
Right. And I would say this, especially to people that are listening, young, older, middle of the road career, it doesn't matter. Recruit to the chief. You will be way better off working on it as you're going through it and putting processes in place to be successful throughout it, versus trying the method of it works until it doesn't.
Yeah, and you said it. So put it in the processes. So who has to do that? Does it have to be a written policy, an SOP, or could it be an unwritten? There's a lot of unwritten rules over the years have become written because of all the legality aspect of it. But ultimately, what we're both saying is that there has to be a process to look at the near misses that we experience in the fire service every single day, all throughout the country. And it could be favorable or unfavorable, but either in that particular experience, but it could all be potentially processed if we have a construct to do that and address it. And if we look at NIOSH, right, and the NIOSH 5 and what leads to injuries and death is the lack or misinformation that's out there. If the leadership, whatever rank they are, barn boss or whoever, create that conversation, we'll have all our generations within the fire service and the next ones be more willing to process that potentially unprocessed near miss experience, and hopefully from a mental health standpoint, won't be carrying as much weight.
Yeah, you have to.
An old guy like me.
Older. You have to have those conversations. You got to get those conversations in the firehouses if they're not. You got to get those conversations in your command staff meetings, from the top all the way down. And we've said the word I've said the word a few times, vulnerability, right? Make yourself vulnerable, make your firehouse vulnerable, make your crew vulnerable to where you can have those conversations and you can talk at it and come at it from a positivity standpoint. And, there might be some things that come out of that near miss that, that might be directed at you because you were the guy pumping, or you were the officer, or you were the chief on the job, or you were the tailboard that didn't, stretch the line the right way. And don't take it personal. Take it as a vulnerable growth opportunity. And when we create those environments, man, life is great, right? But you have to put your armor down, and you have to realize that you're not going to always be the best on every single time. And when you try to have this mindset, if I have to be there's no room for failure and I have to be 100% right. And every time that I'm not, I'm going to stress about it and I'm going to live in it and it's going to consume me. It doesn't work out.
Well, it's unrealistic. A goal, but unrealistic. And you started the show talking about what are your expectations in our crisis management world. Is we're going to be exposed to a lot of things that other people can't fix, and we're there to try to address that. In that process, others are not always going to be as successful as we would have liked to, hence potential near miss or reflection of our performance, which can linger. So hopefully this conversation with people, I'm trying to think if I was a listener and be like, oh yeah, when do we hear about near misses? When do we talk about near misses? Do we talk about the aftermath of near misses? Do we talk about the totality of near misses? Do we talk about the favorable and unfavorable aspect of it? It's and then should we and will they?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, Chris, it's been a pleasure always. We're tying in both a actionable thing from the fire service and mental wellness together. Hopefully those of you that joined us enjoyed it. And until next time.
We'll see you.
Welcome to Mental Health Monthly with DeGryse and Chris Muscle.